Look around your house for a second. Maybe there's a dog sleeping on the floor. Maybe there's one waiting for you outside. Maybe you don't own one at all. But regardless of whether you've ever had a dog, there's a very strange fact hiding in plain sight. Dogs are the only animal on Earth that voluntarily gave up life in the wild to live with us. Think about that. Not lions, not bears, not wolves. Dogs. And somehow that decision didn't just change their evolution. It changed ours. In fact, if dogs had never existed, there's a very real chance civilization would look completely different today. No farms. No cities as we know them. Maybe not even the same human species. That sounds ridiculous. After all, they're just pets, right? Well, not even close. To understand what happened, we need to travel back nearly 30,000 years. Long before kingdoms. Long before writing. Long before anyone had ever planted a field. Humans weren't farmers. They weren't builders. They were hunters. Every day was survival. Food wasn't bought. It wasn't grown. It was chased. Entire families wandered enormous landscapes searching for animals, berries, roots, and fresh water. One bad hunting season could wipe out an entire tribe. Then there were the wolves. Back then, wolves were everywhere. Big.
Fast.
Intelligent. They hunted many of the same animals humans hunted, which meant humans and wolves weren't friends. They were competitors. Imagine spotting a deer after 3 exhausting days without food, only to watch a pack of wolves bring it down first. For thousands of years, humans and wolves lived beside each other, but never together. Or at least, that's what everyone thought, until something incredibly strange started happening. Not because humans decided to tame wolves, but because a few wolves made a decision that would change history forever. Here's the part almost everyone gets wrong. Humans didn't wake up one morning and decide to capture a wolf puppy. There was no prehistoric dog trainer. No one invented a leash. The first move wasn't made by us. It was made by the wolves. Imagine a small group of humans sitting around a campfire after a successful hunt. They've eaten most of the meat, but not all of it. Bones, fat, bits of skin, pieces too small to carry. They leave the leftovers behind as they move on. To a hungry wolf, that's an opportunity. Most wolves stayed far away. Humans were dangerous. They carried spears. They threw rocks with terrifying accuracy. Getting too close usually meant getting killed. But every now and then, a wolf was born just a little less fearful than the others. Not fearless, just curious enough. Instead of running away, it waited. It watched from a distance. Then, after the humans left, it quietly walked over and ate the scraps. Those wolves didn't have to chase deer. They didn't have to risk injury fighting elk or bison. Humans were accidentally doing part of the hunting for them, and that changed everything. Generation after generation, the least aggressive wolves survived a little better. The calmest wolves had easier access to food. They raised more pups. Those pups inherited the same calmer personalities. Slowly, almost invisibly, the wolves around human camps became different from the wolves living deep in the wilderness, and humans noticed too. The calmer wolves weren't attacking. They weren't stealing children. In fact, they were doing something surprisingly useful. They scared away other predators. Imagine trying to sleep in the middle of the Ice Age. There are bears nearby, hyenas, hostile tribes. Every strange sound could mean death. But wolves hear things long before humans do. Their hearing is incredible. Their sense of smell is even better. If something dangerous approached the camp, the wolves reacted first. They growled. They barked. They became an early warning system. Without realizing it, humans had hired the world's first security guards, and they were working for leftover bones. Neither species planned this partnership. It wasn't friendship yet. It wasn't ownership. It was simply 2 intelligent predators discovering that life was a little easier, together. By now, evolution had quietly begun changing both species. The wolves were becoming less wild, and humans were becoming increasingly dependent on animals that weren't quite wolves anymore. Neither side knew it, but together, they had just started one of the most successful partnerships in the entire history of life on Earth. At first, the partnership was simple. Humans left behind scraps. The friendlier wolves cleaned them up. Everyone benefited. But evolution rarely stops at good enough. Once humans realized these animals weren't a threat, they started bringing them closer. Some wolf pups lost their mothers. Instead of leaving them behind, humans raised them. The tamest pups grew up around people instead of packs. They learned human voices, human routines, human smells. And generation after generation, they became less like wolves and more like something entirely new. The first dogs. Now imagine you're a hunter 20,000 years ago. You don't have binoculars. You don't have maps. You don't even know what's over the next hill. Finding food is mostly luck, unless you have a dog. A dog's nose contains hundreds of millions of scent receptors, far more than a human's. To us, a forest might seem empty. To a dog, it's filled with invisible trails. A deer that passed hours ago, a rabbit hiding underground, another human tribe moving nearby. Dogs could detect all of it. Suddenly, hunting became far more efficient. A wounded animal that would normally disappear into the forest could now be tracked for miles. Entire hunting parties became more successful. Families ate more often. Children survived harsh winters. More children surviving meant larger communities. Larger communities meant more ideas, more cooperation, more innovation. But hunting wasn't the only thing dogs transformed. They also changed how humans traveled. As people spread into colder regions, some dogs became powerful enough to pull sleds. Crossing frozen landscapes that once took days suddenly became much easier. Humans carried more supplies, moved farther, explored places that had once seemed impossible. Dogs even protected camps while people slept. Their hearing was sharper. Their noses never stopped working. Long before a human heard footsteps, the dog already knew someone or something was approaching. For thousands of years, dogs became our alarms, our hunting partners, our protectors, and eventually, our family. Scientists have even found ancient graves where humans and dogs were buried together. Think about how extraordinary that is. In a world where every calorie mattered, where survival came before everything, people chose to bury their dogs with respect. Not because the dogs were useful anymore, but because they mattered. Somewhere along the way, this stopped being a partnership built on survival and became something much deeper. But the biggest surprise wasn't what humans did for dogs. It was what dogs quietly did to the human brain. Here's the strangest part of the story. Dogs weren't the only species evolving. Humans were changing too. Not physically, at least not in any obvious way, but socially, emotionally, even neurologically. Scientists have discovered something fascinating. When you look into your dog's eyes, your brain releases a hormone called oxytocin. It's often nicknamed the bonding hormone, the same chemical that helps parents bond with their babies, the same chemical involved in trust, friendship, and cooperation. And here's the unbelievable part. Dogs experience the same thing. When they look back at you, their brains release oxytocin too. Think about how extraordinary that is. Somewhere over thousands of years, two completely different species evolved a way to strengthen their emotional connection using the very same biological system. That isn't something you see every day in evolution. It's one of the strongest cross-species relationships ever discovered. And as human societies grew, dogs kept finding new jobs. Some guarded villages. Others herded sheep across enormous fields. Some pulled sleds across frozen tundras. Others tracked wounded animals through dense forests. Eventually, they helped soldiers, guided blind people, detected diseases, rescued earthquake survivors, protected police officers, found missing children. Even today, long after we've invented satellites, drones, and artificial intelligence, dogs still perform tasks that technology struggles to replace. Their noses can detect certain diseases before medical tests do. They can smell explosives, locate disaster victims buried beneath rubble, sense seizures before they happen. 30,000 years later, they're still helping us survive. But maybe the biggest lesson isn't about dogs at all. It's about evolution. When people think of evolution, they usually imagine bigger teeth, sharper claws, or stronger muscles. But sometimes, the greatest evolutionary advantage isn't becoming stronger. It's learning to cooperate. Humans didn't become Earth's dominant species because we were the fastest. We weren't. We weren't the strongest. We weren't the biggest. We survived because we built alliances. First with each other, then incredibly, with another predator. A predator that could have remained our enemy forever. Instead, both species accidentally discovered that working together was better than competing. The wolf became the dog. The hunter became the companion. And together, we changed each other's destiny. So the next time you see a dog wagging its tail, or sleeping peacefully beside a human, remember this. You're not looking at a pet. You're looking at the oldest friendship in human history. A friendship that began with a few leftover bones beside an ancient campfire, and quietly helped shape the modern world. Not many species can say they changed the course of human evolution. Dogs can.